So I'm not sure how I did it, but I somehow got the Hoka Mach 5 to 300 miles. One day I looked down at my Strava and there it was, 300 miles. Now this is a shoe that is not known for having a reputation for reliability and durability. There's no rubber outsole on it. It has exposed foam on the bottom, and a lot of runners complain that it breaks down within that 200 to 250 mile mark. I am not a particularly light-footed runner. I'm a heel striker. I also have a cadence in the 170 and I'm 6'2", so I put a lot of force on my shoes and typically retire them at that 300 mile mark. But somehow, some way, with some heavenly intervention, I got this to 300 miles. So in this video, I'm gonna do a deep dive into all the aspects of the shoe, how they're holding up, how the build quality has been for me, and particularly how the outsole looks with all the wear and tear of those 3 centuries worth of miles. All right, let's get into it. Before we get into it, I want to tell you about the running shoe matcher tool. If you're looking for a new shoe, check out the running shoe matcher tool. This is a really cool tool I built that matches you with the best shoe for you. It could be the Hoka Mach 5 based on your goals and preferences. So you can go in there, answer 5 questions about what type of shoe you're looking for, whether you want a daily trainer, a race day shoe, or a tempo shoe, and we will match you with the best shoe for you. So it's live right now and it's free. You can check it out at runningshoematcher.com, and I'll put a link in the description below. So quick background on why I got quick background on how I've used the Hoka Mach 5 before we get into the durability and reliability. In the early miles of the shoe, one of the key elements that stuck out to me was this supercritical EVA Pro Fly Plus foam. It's very soft, but also nice and bouncy, and paired with this bottom layer of firmer EVA, had a really unique ride that could do everything from slow recovery running miles, 10 minutes per mile to me, all the way up to, I did mile repeats at a 5:20 pace in this, and it worked beautifully. So extremely versatile shoe. I've used it all the way up to 16-mile long runs, mile race pace stuff, those repeats, and there's no run that this couldn't handle. The only real area of weakness was the last 30 minutes of 2-hour long runs. Felt like the foam was bottoming out a little bit. All right guys, so now let's get into what kind of shape this is in after 300 miles. So if you look at the upper here, this almost looks like it's brand new out of the box. There's very minimal wear and tear. I'm pretty light on my shoes in terms of the upper and just keeping them looking good. Where I'm not light on the shoe is the bottom. But this looks really new, really fresh and clean. There's no issues. There's almost no mud or dirt on this. I think I've only really run in this in the rain one time, and I've cleaned it off well. And you can see a little bit of discoloration up here, but really good shape on the upper. There is a little bit of dirt right up here from some rubbing and probably some mud kicking up. But other than that, upper is in extremely good shape. Same thing with the laces. We're not seeing a lot of discoloration here, and the tongue is in pretty good shape too. I do have to say this blue dye, this was one of the areas that wasn't great on the shoe. This blue dye rubbed off. So if you look super close here, you can see that there's a little bit of bleeding on the blue, and I think the laces in some places as well got a little bit of that blue coming off on them, but nothing too crazy. On the inside of the shoe, you can see that this application has not rubbed off. If I look at some other shoes that have 300 miles on them, or even 150 to 200 miles on them, usually whatever type of thing they've printed on the inside of the shoe has rubbed off completely. This one has not. So despite people saying Hoka has poor build quality, the upper of the shoe and all of the effects and applications have held up really well through 300 miles. All right guys, now let's get into how the midsole foam has held up. So if you look at this top layer of Pro Fly Plus, which is this supercritical EVA, you're gonna see there's not a whole lot of creasing or wear on it. I think one of the reasons it's held up so well for me throughout 300 miles is because what I've done is I've gone through periods of wearing it 3 or 4 or 5 times a week. And then I've let it rest in my rotation. So this just happened accidentally. I wasn't running it as I was recovering the first 2 weeks after my half marathon. I ran it, I think, once during that period, which I think allowed the foam to rebound a little bit. So this Pro Fly Plus here, the supercritical EVA, is really soft. If I do the push test, you'll see my finger can get pretty deep in it here. And then this rubberized standard EVA is pretty hard. There's absolutely no wear and tear on the rubberized EVA in terms of crinkling or creasing. And there's very minimal wear and tear on the Pro Fly Plus. You can see here on the inside, there's a little bit of crinkling and creasing, but not nearly as much as some other shoes I've seen at this 300 mile mark. In terms of the ride experience and how the Pro Fly Plus has held up, I think the key area of weakness, again, is in the latter half or latter quarter of those long runs, but that was how it was fresh out of the box. This is not a great long running shoe, at least for me. I'm about 160, 6'2", lower cadence, as I mentioned. So as I get into later stages of 16 plus mile efforts, I'm really wanting a bit more support and a bit more foam under my foot. Even something like the Adidas Audi Zero SL, which is a little bit firmer, that can firm up to the end of long runs, but I prefer that firmer feeling versus a bottoming out feeling like I get in this. As an alternative to this, if you want a longer running shoe that's pretty similar in terms of the rocker geometry, I would suggest the Saucony Triumph. That does have a bit of a higher drop. The drop on that is 10 millimeters, but it's not gonna have that same bottoming out feeling at all toward the latter stages of long runs. For shorter runs, anything below 10 miles, the foam still feels really good with this rocker geometry. You'll see here, it's almost like the bottom of a boat. It's held up really well with the firmer layer of rubber, providing some protection between the soft layer and the ground, which I think is another reason, that little bit of buffer between the ProFly Plus and the impact of the ground. That's another reason why the foam is held up better than other shoes I've had with this softer foam, particularly a shoe like the Asics Gel Nimbus. All right, guys, now let's go to the scary part that everybody has been waiting for. It is the outsole. So if you take a look here, this is the part of the shoe where we're gonna see the most wear and tear, the most degradation, and the most change from what it looked like straight out of the box. It's honestly pretty remarkable to look at this. It looks like a brand new shoe when I hold it like this, and then you look at the bottom and it's absolutely atrocious. Well, first of all, this little pink thing here, that's because I stepped on some chalk from my daughter's beautiful chalk art outside, so that has nothing to do with the shoe. But other than that, you'll see I completely wore down the outsole. You can see none of that original pattern. I'll throw up a picture here so you can see what the initial outsole looked like before I wore it off. And the other thing is, it's not just a visual wearing down of the pattern. You can see here that I've sliced a straight line through the back of the shoe. It's probably missing 1 to 2 millimeters of this lower layer of the outsole of the foam here. Now, it's not great to run in shoes that have been altered this much, 1 or 2 millimeters. They say that it can start to do weird things with your mechanics. However, I've run probably 30 to 40 miles with the outsole looking like this, and I haven't had any issues with my mechanics or feeling weird. It still feels like an excellent shoe. I also think because one of the main landing areas of the shoe is where you have this existing hole. So it functions to put a lot of the pressure straight through this area that's not gonna be directly contacting the ground, which for me makes the shoe feel pretty similar to when it came out of the box. Now, if we take a look at the front of the shoe here, you can again see that I've worn down some of the pattern. It does not look like it did when it was fresh out of the box, but we have a little bit more of that pattern left around the outside here. You can at least see these crossing lines. You can see that there's some of those dots here on the midfoot. You can even still see the Hoka logo here. So it's definitely this back area that's the worst part of the shoe. Now, in terms of how long I plan to keep the shoe, it's really gonna depend on when the ride itself feels different or feels like it's not accomplishing the purposes that I want it to. Right now, it feels awesome to run in still. I don't think I'll have to retire it within the next 50 miles, so I'm gonna see if I can take it to 400 miles. This and the Saucony Triumph have been some of the most durable midsole foam shoes that I've seen out there. If this had an outsole on it that held up, I think the foam itself could last 500, 600 miles, but because it doesn't have that outsole, it's gonna have to be retired at some point within the next 100 to 120 miles, just because I am gonna start wearing into the orange layer of foam, that ProFly Plus. This white stuff isn't gonna last forever. At $140, I'm happy with the value that I've gotten out of this shoe. I wasn't able to take Saucony Endorphin Speed 3s longer than 300 miles because that Piba foam just started degrading and it started to get this firm, not as bouncy feeling after that 300-mile mark, and then those rubber outsoles were just absolutely trash. So even though this doesn't have a rubber outsole, I'm getting more use, more reliability, more longevity than the Speed 3, which to me is the plated competitor to this and to the Mach X. I'm happy with how this is done for me. And if I see a good deal on it, maybe I'll pick up a version 2. I typically don't repeat buy shoes, but this is one that I would consider just because it is so versatile. It's a great travel shoe because of that. It's a great do-it-all shoe, and also because Hoka is a little bit of a cool brand, you could use this as a walking shoe and a casual shoe as well. Last thing here, just so you can see what it looks like, I will show you the other shoe here. Pretty similar outsole in terms of the wear and tear on this one. Looks like I've worn into this orange foam a little bit more on this guy, but forefoot is gonna be the same amount of worn down. And then we're gonna see the same nice looking upper and midsole foam. All right, guys, so there you have it. That is how the Hoka Mach 5 has held up for me through 300 miles, which is a high mileage point to take shoes for a runner like me. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.